Hello and good afternoon, wherever you're watching this afternoon, and welcome to Optimum Live. My name's Martin Cross, and I'm the host today, and I'm delighted to be joined as ever by the Managing Director of Optimum, Tom Heeley. Tom, how are you?
Good, very good week. Thank you very much. You had a good holiday as well, Martin, didn't you?
Yes, I have, yeah. That's why I've got the light on from this side, trying to highlight a slight tan. But anyway, let's crack on. Let's not talk about my half tan. We're here today to talk about the dangers of concussion, something that affects many of us who have played sport in the past. But there is some debate about, not debate, some understanding, more understanding needed of what concussion is from the regular Joe who turns up and plays sport once a week. I'm one of those, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So, Tom, let's start from the top. What is a concussion?
It was interesting. While we were planning this, I did a bit of research and just Googled it. What is a concussion? I just thought, I wonder what the description is. Description is consciousness or confusion caused by a blow to the head. So that's the dictionary. If I'm honest, it may well need a little bit of adapting. So it doesn't always have to be unconsciousness. It doesn't always have to be a faint or being knocked out or like blacked out. That doesn't always have to be the case. And it doesn't always have
people do think that, don't they? We do think that, regular Joes. We think we have to be knocked out or we can't be concussed.
Completely. And that doesn't have to be the case at all. So, and it doesn't have to be a blow to the head. So it could just be like a car crash, for example, where the whiplash and the whipping of the head can cause the internal motion and that causes a concussion. So it doesn't either have to be a blow or it doesn't either have to be unconsciousness. So it's generally speaking a rapid movement of the head, which forces the skull to move and the brain inside to almost rattle. Sounds horrible, but rattle inside.
We'll call this up at the moment, just talking about that, just as a graphic to illustrate that.
And that violent sort of shaking or that violent sort of movement will cause the soft muscle brain to then move against the skull, and that causes the bleeding. And that's what then gives you the symptoms to follow.
Okay. Just an opinion at this point to say, if you've got any questions wherever you're watching this afternoon, please drop them in the comments box, and we'll try and have time to get to those at the end. If I've got a concussion, Tom, and I know I've got one, what's the best way to manage it? How do I go about that?
Yeah, so the first thing to really think about is let's say you're on a rugby field, you've been tackled, you've maybe not hit your head like we just talked about, and you just had that whiplash scenario. Hopefully at the side of the pitch, there's a physio there or a parent there that can guide you through what the next stages need to be. The RFU and the FA have some really, really good guidelines to follow in terms of return to sport, things to look out for, and things to be a bit cautious of. But some of the big key things in the first sort of 24, 48 hours are things like avoiding screens, so phones, laptops, TV, making sure you get some good rest, eating well, not giving yourself too much to focus or think about, or basically giving your brain a rest. Give yourself, your eyes and your brain a rest, and allow them to rest and recover. Loud music, anything that forces you to concentrate or focus needs to be removed, and also allowing somebody else to be there at the same time with you to keep with you and make sure that you're okay, and it's not going to get worse or progress and become something a little bit more serious.
And some of the things we highlight here in this graphic really can make a difference if you do those things, I take it.
Yeah, completely. And for me, I think a concussion isn't just the 2 or 3 days where you might have a sore head and a bit of a headache. It's the long term. It's the 6 to 12, the 18 months later. I think an interesting story to probably go and read is the Rowan Cheshire story from skiing snowboard from probably 2014, 2016, and how she sort of coped with it and the mental struggles that she had afterwards and the physical issues. And it's interesting to read because from an outsider, it may be something that you never thought of. But I think it's the long-term effects that you need to be wary of rather than just those short-term and carry on with what you're doing. Because
I think, I was going to say, it's a good thing, I guess, that in many sports recently, especially rugby, there are many people starting to look at the long-term effects of that. And obviously with the NFL, CTE has been a big part of a lawsuit the NFL settled recently. And certainly with rugby, people are starting to see, guys that have retired 10 years ago, people like Steve Thompson from Northampton, starting to get some of those, symptoms of neurological brain issues as a result of what they've done. So I guess that's a good thing that those sort of things are coming to the fore now. We're learning more about it.
Yeah, definitely. There's way more awareness around it, way more considerations to the effects, short and long term. I think the long term is probably, like you just said there, the thing that people are starting to come a bit, maybe not to terms with, but just starting to understand a little bit greater. And I guess that, I guess it's just an awareness in that first initial instance of, is this a concussion? Do I need to go and get checked? From those sports that I've just mentioned there, FA and RFU, those sort of guidelines apply to most sports, whether you're playing hockey or cricket, or if you were to read those as a parent or even just an individual, that would be a really good starting base as to how to progress and what things to do and what things not to do. Great piece of information out there at the minute.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, isn't it? We'll pop those links in the comments below when we're finished here. That if there's numerous parents around who children play the likes of football and rugby who haven't come across a concussion before, so we'll stick those guidelines in the comments below. Just before we move on to how can we reduce the risk of concussions, Tom, what is secondary concussion? Because that's something that, again, has been in the media a little bit more recently. Yeah,
secondary concussion is quite serious, even more serious than an initial concussion, I would say. So the first concussion will cause some sort of a bleed, and imagine that is similar to like a dead leg. Okay, so if you've had a dead leg from a tackle or a cricket ball hitting you or whatever it may be, if you keep poking that, it's sore. It's sore and it keeps on hurting, and it will hurt for longer the more you poke it. Similar thing with a secondary concussion. If you've already got a concussion and then you lay another one on top of it in a short period of time whilst you're still recovering from the first one, that's when you get longer term effects. So the thing that we need to be really careful of, and to make sure those guidelines that we'll put on at the bottom, are to make sure that if you have a concussion and that's been highlighted, to follow the guidelines quite strictly. And at any stage, should you get any symptoms, you revert back to a point where you don't get any symptoms. So that's quite key, to be honest. Otherwise, that secondary concussion, should you get another blow to the head or another scenario, whiplash event, then that secondary one will become more significant than the first.
Can secondary concussion only be an actual thing in a certain timeline after the first one, or is it something that 6 months later, could still be an issue?
That's hard to know at the minute. A lot of the studies and a lot of the research is around the not so much the timescales, because everyone recovers slightly differently and depends on how severe your concussion is, but about your symptoms and your cognitive and your ability to just do normal day-to-day tasks without getting that headache or that pain or those foggy sensations or that discomfort that you get. And it's a matter of going through those stages before returning. Should you return early, then that's when and then you get a secondary concussion. That's when your symptoms become worse. So that may be a month, it may be 6 months, it may be 12 months for different people, and how severe the initial one is in the first place.
And I guess the advice from someone like yourself would always be err on the side of caution before you return to sports or action.
Yeah, and always to seek someone's advice. So whether it be a GP or a doctor, or if you're part of a team or a club, there may be someone in that team who's a nurse or a practitioner who may be able to help you through those guidelines. The guidelines online are very good, but just to kind of get a bit of an understanding as to where to go next, to seek some advice from somebody else, just to understand that and challenge it and describe that to you is also really important.
Okay, it may be a difficult question because sport is sport, but what can we do to reduce the risks of concussion, if anything?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I was writing some stuff down the other day. So I remember I had this similar sort of discussion years ago at uni, and we said, "Oh, what about scrum mats?" I'm like, well, it's not enough. It's not enough. And actually, if you were to look at some of the research in NFL, they probably get more concussions in NFL than we do in rugby or union or league. And that's almost the fact that the helmets cause this, I don't know, almost
like people feel they're protected when they're not.
Yeah, exactly. Almost an invincible factor. So just throw themselves into things. So in actual fact, sort of the rule changes which have been made recently, especially in rugby, we're yet to see whether that makes a difference, but they're trying to change the rules a little bit to modify that. So that's one thing. One of the big things though is to have some good neck strength. So some of the research has come out. So for things like rugby, things like boxing, for example, where you may be taking blows to the head fairly regularly, to have a good stable neck to be able to absorb that whiplashing effect will reduce the impact and reduce the movement inside and internally, and that has an effect on the concussion basis. So having a good strong neck is one thing, rule changes are another, but otherwise at the minute it does seem very difficult to try and prevent those sorts of things from happening.
Do you feel that various sporting bodies are taking concussion seriously now? 20 years ago, it'd be that gladiator mentality of, he'll be fine, crack on, let's get on with it.
No, way more.
Things are going in the right direction, but have they gone far enough?
Yeah, way more serious. Yeah, way more serious. I think it's going in the right direction. I'd be interested to see where it goes in another 5 or 10 years' time, because I think the way we are testing at the minute post concussion, I think there's probably going to be more cognitive-based tests and more sort of skill-based tests that will probably start to come through that are available to more the general public and rather than the elite level, to be able to test things. And I think that's probably a good way to go. I think sporting, we're doing well. I think we're going in the right direction in terms of sports. I think sometimes a car crash, for example, the GP may not recognise it enough and may not have the right experience and may not have the right sort of teaching in the first place. That becomes difficult. But I think in sport, I think we're going in the right direction. Yes, there's probably more to do, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Okay, and not to scare people too much, but what damage can be done if we're not taken seriously or a concussion's not treated correctly? Yeah,
similar to what you were saying then with sort of Steve Thompson, sort of that almost old school maybe mentality of kind of carry on, it's just a bang to the head and it's a bit of a headache, but you'll be all right. It can lead to some neurological issues. I think we've seen some links to dementia and Alzheimer's recently, and those studies are still going on. Links to the old heavy footballs that were wet and big heavy leather and those sorts of repetitive. The pitches weren't as good, so the ball was maybe in the air more, so it was bodies, and so we're probably starting to see the signs now of things that maybe happened, like you said, 20, 30 years ago. I guess in a way we're almost yet to know how much of that is down to those repeated, and they may not even be concussions, just micro injuries. Keep on reoccurring.
And one of the reasons people say we need to be careful is because I take it, or I've heard that it's easier to get a second concussion after a first one, and so on and so on and so on. Is that the case? Yeah.
That's the case. Yeah, that's the case. And unless you want to delve into the depths of more scanning and more imaging, it's going to be hard to 100% rule out whether someone's had a concussion or whether that concussion is completely healed. So that's why the protocols are really good to follow, because it kind of rules things out as you go through and reduces the risk at each stage you go. Unless you go down the imaging route, in which case you would have to image everybody, but even then it wouldn't be 100% clear as to whether it's done or not.
Okay, we're getting there. Progress is being made.
We're getting there. It's getting better. Okay.
That's a good point to end on. We're running out of time anyway, so thanks a lot, Tom. Just a reminder to everyone watching today, wherever you've watched us, you can find out more information about Optimum on our website. You can email Tom with any questions, or if you need some treatment or got an injury yourself that's particularly bothering you and want to find out some more, send Tom an email and book yourself an appointment to go and see him and his staff at the clinic. And a reminder to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We've just did our first one of these last week, which is how to spot and treat a torn Achilles tendon. This time next week, we'll be back on another Optimum Live to talk about shoulder pain when bench pressing and how to avoid that and what you can do if you are struggling from that. That's all from me and all from Tom as well. Tom, as ever, thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Cheers. And any questions or comments, we'll try and get back as soon as possible.
Yeah, stick some in the box below if you've got any questions, and if you want to know a little bit more about concussion or feel like there's any other questions you want to ask Tom, please stick a question in and we'll do our best to answer them. That leaves me, Martin Crowson, time to say thanks a lot for joining us today, wherever you've been watching this broadcast. Join us again next week around the same time for some more information. Tom, thanks a lot, and we'll catch you all later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.